Hello again, HI 121. In this video I'm going to go over Chapter 11, Japan, Korea, and Vietnam to 1500. As I mentioned earlier in the semester, once we got through the beginning of the course, we slow way down, and as of right now, not counting 11, we only have 5.5 chapters to go till the end of the semester, so we're in very good shape right now. The Land of the Rising Sun. Geography accounts for many trends in Japanese history. There's 4 main islands: Hokkaido, Honshu, Kyushu, and Shikoku. It has a largely temperate climate, and it's much warmer on the east coast because of the Pacific Current. And most of the people live in the Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto plains. Historically, farmers have been able to harvest 2 crops of rice annually since very, very early in Japanese history. Volcanic soils in the archipelago are very, very fertile, which explains the productivity of farmers. But unfortunately, because of the volcanoes, they're also prone to earthquakes, like the 1923 quake that destroyed Tokyo and the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster. Because they're an island, this effect has strengthened the Japanese sense of ethnic and cultural distinctiveness. This is a very, very homogeneous culture, and they tend to be reluctant to change the way their culture operates. They will import ideas from other areas, but then they adopt them and make them Japanese. Prehistoric Japan. After giving birth to Japan, Izanami gave birth to the sun goddess Amaterasu, and a descendant of Amaterasu descended to the earth and became the founder of the Japanese nation. Some Japanese still believe that Akihito, who is still the present emperor, the son of Hirohito, is descended from this sun goddess. And there's been people in these islands for at least 100,000 years. There were Neolithic. As we remember, the Neolithic revolution was the farming revolution, and they first appeared in the first millennium before the Common Era. And by 400, rice cultivation was introduced, probably from Korea. The Yayuu peoples emerged from mixing with the historic Jomon peoples, and they moved onto the main island of Honshu. The warrior Jimmu established a kingdom in the Yamato plain, and eventually the chieftain of the dominant clan in the Yamato region claimed he was descended from Amaterasu and became the prime chieftain of this main island. And the main island comes to dominate the rest of the archipelago. Shotoku Tashi launched reforms in the 7th century Common Era. He sent a mission to the Tang Dynasty to learn the political institutions that were in use in China. And his objective was to limit the powers of the hereditary nobility and the authority of the Yamato ruler, who claimed that he was divine. Ironically, the Yamato clan may be descended from the Korean peninsula. But the Taka reforms established the Grand Council, and Japan was divided up into administrative districts similar to the Chinese style. They developed a law code and a tax system, and developed an interest in Buddhism from their contact with the Chinese. Some of the first Chinese who then traveled to China were Buddhist pilgrims. During the Nara period, the Fujiwara clan became influential, and they established a new capital city at Nara, patterned on Chang'an, that famous city in China, and the Yamato ruler began to use the title the Son of Heaven. Unlike in China, the mandate remains in perpetuity, not just on individual talent or virtue. There's no sense of the mandate of heaven. This is absolute. The central government never curbs the power of the aristocracy. In the Heian period, powerful Buddhists became oppressive, and the emperor moved the capital to Heian, which is in present-day Kyoto. The Fujiwara clan is the real power, not the emperor. Decentralization occurred, Powerful families slowly accumulated land ownership, and the local aristocrats tended to take justice into their own hands, and they used a new class of military retainers called the samurai, whose purpose was to protect their patron, those lords and aristocrats who were the wealthy landowners. And the samurai were very prestigious. They lived by the warrior code called Bushido, the way of the warrior, and they became a surrogate government in the countryside. Kamakura Shogunate, by the end of the 1100s, a state of constant warfare existed between rival noble families, and eventually a powerful noble from a warrior clan emerged, Minamoto Yoritomo, and he lived in those years, and he became the first shogun. He set up his power base at the Kamakura Peninsula near present-day Tokyo. He created a more centralized government under a powerful military leader known as the shogun. And under the shogunate system, the emperor is a figurehead, and real power was in the hands of the shogun. And this is going to be the Japanese system until the Meiji Restoration in 1868. In 1266, as we talked about, Kublai Khan demanded tribute from the Japanese. They refused, so the Mongol emperor sent more than 30,000 troops to invade, but they were faced with a typhoon, bad weather, and it prevented that one. And in 1281, they tried again. 15,000 actually landed on Kyushu, but the divine wind wiped out these forces, and they're not going to see another foreign invasion until American forces landed on Okinawa in 1945. Economic and social structures, trade and manufacturing is very slow to develop. This is largely an agrarian society. After the Yamato state, a money economy did develop, and they introduced metal coins from China in the 1100s. Trade with Korea and China expanded during the Kamakura era, and those are the things they exported. And the Japanese are very aggressive, and eventually the Chinese and Korean officials will move to limit Japanese commercial missions. And a lot of this gets ignored, and they resort to piracy. In the Ashikaga shogunate, manufacturing and commerce developed rapidly, and the daimyo, or the great noble families who provided the tax breaks to the local guilds in return for benefits, become a huge part of Japanese society. There's a class of genin, or landless laborers, that develop because they lose land. They can't pay their taxes. And at the very bottom of the social scale are the ita, are hereditary slaves, who were responsible for the degrading occupations like curing leather and burying the dead. They're probably descendants of the people who were conquered by the Yamato, who live in the far north regions of Hokkaido. They're still there today, and they're still discriminated against today. Small villages is where the vast majority of people live, with basic food. Polygyny is common, but the inheritance rights of women was guaranteed. A banded woman could divorce and remarry. A husband could divorce the wife if she failed to produce a male child, committed adultery, disobeyed her in-laws, or talked too much, or other violations of Japanese customs. Many women became Buddhists and entered the monastery. Kami, spirits who reside in trees, rivers, and streams and mountains, eventually evolved into Shinto, or the way of the gods. And this requires ritual acts, which are a process of purification. And Shinto stresses the beauty of nature and the importance of nature. And eventually, Shinto evolves into a state doctrine that is linked with belief in the divinity of the emperor and the sacredness of the Japanese nation. And Buddhism is the other alternative to Shintoism. The Pure Land and Zen sects are the most influential Buddhist sects in Japan. China and Korea are the source of the language, and eventually they will adopt Chinese pictographic language for writing, and some Chinese characters were given Japanese pronunciation, and later they simplify these characters into a phonetic symbols that are used alongside Japanese characters. Haiku is the unique linked verse 3-line poetry of 5, 7, and 5 syllables. Tale of Genji is a famous story, and there is a Buddhist statue. Zen Buddhism influenced Japanese aesthetics, and it found expression in gardening and in the tea ceremony, or the bonsai, the pot scenery, the miniature plant displays that the Japanese are famous for. Centralization is not really embraced by the Japanese because of the Shogun period. And I will end this video here and pick up there in the next one.